Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Johnson. In concert with Mojo, one of our other sponsors and something Chris and I are very proud of is our relationship with the Country Network, which we've recently done a deal to produce a pilot series for a really reality fly fishing show for them. And we shot the first episode of that up in the Smokies a couple of weeks ago, and it should be released on the Country Network streaming channel sometime in the next month or so. Also, one of our sponsors is the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation. This is the largest philanthropic organization that supports the Blue Ridge Parkway. And we kind of put our money where our mouth is. We give 5% of our profits to them each year. Also, based out of Asheville, North Carolina, is the Southern Highland Craft Guild. Most of you may know of it as the Folk Arts Center. Is their main location there on the Parkway, and I'm a member there, and it's just been a great relationship, and they're a great supporter of ours. Chris, we're gonna cover a lot of territory tonight. We're gonna start out by just a real quick overview of the book that started all of this. It's why we're here tonight, actually. And then we're going to get into the East Fork, the big picture, taking an overview of the entire watershed and what it looks like and what you can expect when you get there. And then something right out of the book, the at a glance description of some of the key metrics and descriptors of that watershed that any fly fisherman is going to want to know if they're going to plan a trip to go there. And then we're going to get into the soup and nuts, really, of the watershed by maps, a lot of photographs, recent and some historical photographs to show you some of the past imagery there. How do you get there? What's the easiest way to get to this water? We'll show you, of course, a little trout porn, and then we'll tell you kind of our experience of fishing that watershed. And then if you're like we are, you want to know every time you go someplace to fish, who are the local outfitters in the area where if you need equipment or you need some bugs or insight or whatever, you can drop in and do that. You probably want to know what kind of bugs and gear we use when we're there and what we use to catch fish. And then what happens when the bottom falls out of the sky? It starts raining, snowing, sleeting, hailing, or whatever. What are some plan B waters that you can go to? And then finally, we call it creature comforts, but where do you stay? Where do you eat? Where do you buy cigars? Where can you buy beer? That kind of stuff. We've got some insight on that you may want. And then at the end, any questions that you've got, we'll hang around as long as we need to answer any of the questions. Just a 1 minute overview of this book. It's a first in class book that's written about the North Carolina section and some 200 streams and creeks that are there. Forwarded by Mark Woods, friend of ours, past superintendent of the Blue Ridge Parkway. This book has about over 300 color pages, about 145 images. Some of them we took, some of them are historical images. We do talk about the trout, the brook brown and rainbow trout, probably a lot of stuff but probably some things you don't know too about the fish. We talk a lot about how the Parkway gets its water, what it does with it when it does get it, how it turns into rivers and streams that we like to fish. I've divided the 200, or really the 200 river streams and creeks in North Carolina up over 4 63-mile sections. It makes it really easy for you to organize it and understand where on the Parkway they are and how you can get to them and organize your trip. I spent a lot of time talking about the history and the descriptions and the access to each of these waters, as well as some of the local stories and lore that the locals tell about it. And then something kind of near and dear to our heart, if you're going to go somewhere to fish, there's some creature comforts that you need to know. You need to know where the local outfitters are, where you can stay, where do you eat if you don't eat beans and weenies over the campfire. Is there some good restaurants you might be able to go to close by? And then one point I definitely want to make is that right around 10% of our profits go to the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation. And we're very proud of a lot of our publicity we've gotten through PBS, a lot of the magazines, the Country Network, and of course, Samantha Brown's Places to Love. So that's a little bit about the book. Chris, let's give them an overview, kind of the big picture of this watershed. We're going to start with this overview picture because you probably want to know kind of where this area is if you haven't fished it before and what's around it. This is in the middle of a lot of good stuff in the Appalachian Mountains. You notice at the top of the top right, you have Asheville, North Carolina. You got major interstates 20 and 26 and 40 flowing through there from the south. Little community south of there, Mills River, where the airport is. But kind of the hub and center of operations down here for us when we fish the area is Pisgah Forest and Brevard, North Carolina. This is the famous Davidson River watershed right here that many of you, one of the top 100 trout streams in America. Major road going through here, 276 up to Waynesville, North Carolina. And then you got Rossman, North Carolina, right down here. This is only about a 40-mile area you're looking at here. This is not a huge area. In the middle of this are two wilderness areas that have been designated. Shining Rock Wilderness is about 18,000 acres. And then right behind it, kind of to the northwest of it, is the Middle Prong Wilderness, which is about 8,000 acres over here. And you see the red line, we've outlined the Blue Ridge Parkway that runs the ridge all the way from Cherokee, which is just off the screen over here to the left, all the way up over Asheville and just keeps going for another 150 miles or so. The area that we're talking about is this little blue circle here. And this is an area in Shining Rock Wilderness called, really most of it's called Graveyard Fields. That's where the East Fork sources up and flows down to this road here, 276, which is where we're going to stop talking about it. And that's about a 7-mile run there of all the headwaters and the main flow of the East Fork. This is the area we're going to talk about. So this is kind of a general overview of where this water is. And let's drill a little bit deeper here. Chris, you know, we use this at a glance for all of the watersheds that we cover. And it really, when you're a fly fisherman, there are some key things you want to know. In other words, the people who fished it before, how do they rank it? Well, you know, we rank it, especially historically, I rank it a 5 thumbs up out of 5. I wouldn't say it's fishing that way now because of Tropical Storm Fred, because we were fishing it not long ago, and by golly, we had a hard time bringing any fish to hand just because of the damage that's been done. The headwaters sources up, you know, it sources from 2 headwaters at about 4,200 feet. And where it goes under 276, it's still at about 3,400 feet. So it's plenty high for brook trout water. Brook and brown, a rainbow trout are in there a lot. It's only a medium-sized stream as it goes under Highway 276. And we're going to show you that area. It has 5 feeders, really 2 source streams. The Yellowstone prong and dark prong actually come together to form the East Fork. And then between there and 276, you have Greasy Cove prong and Shining Creek are 2 of its tributaries. And we're going to show you all 5 of these in probably more detail than you want to know. It's got a gradient of about 4%, which is relatively flat. That's somewhat deceptive because the center part of it goes up to about 19%. And I'm going to show you that area there that's almost a no man's land. And it flows for about 4.1 miles. And we think the effort that it takes to fish this stream is from moderate down to where it's relatively flat to the area where, Chris, you and I were not long ago between the Middle Falls and Yellowstone Falls area right there. You kind of take your life in your own hands. You're in that area.
Just a little.
Pressure, you're not going to have a lot of pressure there. Graveyard fields, you'll probably see more people fishing there, and we rarely see anyone fishing there. But you get below there, and you're just not going to see a lot of pressure, which is good, especially for a lot of the wild fish that hang out there. So you got all three species of fish there. Access easy off of Highway 276 is where the mouth is for this section we're talking about, and the source is very easy too, because it's just right there off the Blue Ridge Parkway at Graveyard Fields. And there's actually a paved path that goes all the way down to the creek, which is kind of crazy, but it's just extremely easy to get to. So here's what this watershed looks like. Here's the structure of the East Fork of the Pigeon River. It sources up with two headwaters. The first one being Yellowstone Prong that sources up right on the side of the Blue Ridge Parkway. In fact, there's a parking area right here where maybe 50 or 75 cars can park. And on a pretty day, the rock hoppers and Ashevilleans from Asheville, North Carolina especially, are going to cover this place up. And they're going to be hiking and walking around and everything. They're not going to disturb your fishing that much, but this Yellowstone Prong is very, very accessible and in a very beautiful water that resembles, in many cases, a western stream because it's so flat and open and with cobblestone all over it. It's joined by a creek called Dark Prong that runs for about 2.5 miles, about the same elevation, about 4,500 feet up, and joins the Yellowstone Prong at this point, which is the source of the East Fork of the Pigeon River. And it runs for 4.1 miles down to the 276 tunnel, or really huge culvert where it goes under 276 and then continues on down to Crusoe and down on to Canton, North Carolina, and then north into there into Tennessee. But this is the area we're going to be talking about. Now, along here, there are two other streams that are the first tributaries to come in. The first one is Greasy Cove Prong, which runs for about 1.8 miles and joins it. A really great stream, a great brooks trout stream. And then the last one is Shining Creek, which also runs for about 1.8 miles. And then enters about a little more than a mile above the 276 interchange. Now, Chris, the trail system, there's an extensive trail system. In fact, there's a trail that starts at 276, goes up the left side of the East Fork all the way up to Dark Prong. So all of this area has a trail paralleling it and is relatively flat, no more than between 2 and about 4% gradient, all the way up to Dark Prong. From there, the trail goes up to the Blue Ridge Parkway and then back down to an area that we call Skinny Dip Falls, which will show you that for the most part doesn't exist anymore, and then goes back on this ridge and circle backs around. So there's an area right here that really doesn't have a trail. Greasy Prong has got a good access trail from the main flow all the way up past an upper falls here before it disappears and goes and connects in with this other trail system that circles back around. The upper part of Greasy Prong really doesn't have a very good trail system at all. So you're either going up the middle of the stream or you're bushwhacking up the side of it. Dark Prong trail system, guess what? It doesn't exist. There is no trail going up Dark Prong. If you're going to fish Dark Prong from its mouth to its source, you're going to go up the middle of the stream or you're going to bushwhack up and down the side. And that's for 2.5 miles. So it's a great brook trout stream, but getting up and down it is not an easy thing to do. As you get up to Yellowstone Prong, the upper Yellowstone Prong above the upper falls, you have trails honeycombed all over it. So getting all the way up and down that is an easy trail. So for the most part, folks, you've got a trail system to get on and off of these creeks with the exception of Dark Prong here. Now, I really, when we look at this main flow here, there's really three sections. You got the lower section, the lower 4.1 miles of the East Fork that is flat, got a great trail system, easy to get up and down. You've got the upper part of the Yellowstone Prong that's covered up with trail systems and great access off the Parkway. And then you've got this no man's land area right here between the Middle Falls and between the what used to be Skinny Dip Falls down here, or close to right above this last X. There is no trail system other than the access trail that goes down to Skinny Dip Falls and then cuts over to this ridge. So if you're going to fish this area here, which I would, if you're healthy, you're in good shape, and you got, a healthy amount of guts and stamina, this is a magnificent place to explore in the eastern half of the United States. It is rugged, it's in many cases treacherous, and is unbelievably beautiful with the waterfalls and rock gardens and the steep canyon walls that's going to be around you there. So, Chris, anything to add to that overall description here? And then we're going to get in here and we're going to take you up each of these flows and show you what we see and what we catch when we go up there.
Well, definitely in some of these areas, take a young friend with you, like a son-in-law that's young, or somebody that in case you get hurt. That's always a good recommendation. The other is, as AJ mentioned, Greasy Cove was devoid of life this past summer, unfortunately. And of course, this is bear country, right? So especially Graveyard has a lot of berries out in Graveyard, and so you got to be real careful, pay attention to what's going on.
Well, that's some good counsel. The only encounter that I've ever had with a bear, as long as I've been fly fishing, was on Greasy Prong, about halfway up. And this bear was about 100 yards up a straightaway with two cubs. And I was downwind, so they never saw me. But I sat there and watched them for about 45 minutes playing the stream until it started getting so dark I had to leave to try to get out of there before it got dark. Graveyard Fields is covered with blueberries. So in June, July, and early August, the bears are very prevalent in here eating blueberries. And so there's a lot of hikers, there's a lot of people in here, and there's a lot of small bears with their sow mothers. And it's not, you better be very careful if you're going to be in there during the blueberry season. That's a good point, Chris. Thanks. Okay, we're going to go downstream to the mouth of the East Fork, which is the intersection of where it goes under Highway 276, going this way up to Waynesville, North Carolina, and this way it goes to the Blue Ridge Parkway and continues on to Pisgah Forest and Brevard, North Carolina. This square rectangle here, red rectangle, is a culvert, a huge culvert. The biggest culvert I've ever seen. It's probably 30 feet wide and maybe 25 or 30 feet tall. I'm going to show you some images of this. And this is the riverbed that I've highlighted here. But the reason I wanted to show you this, couple of reasons. All of this cobbled area you see here, all the way up, is from storm damage from Tropical Storm Fred. Before that storm, this was heavily forested. Greenery was all down into this area right here. And this is a steep embankment right here going up to the parking area. And it is completely washed out now. it didn't even look the same as it did. It looks nothing like it did before Tropical Storm Fred. And so we're going to show you some other images like that of before and after to give you some reason as to why the East Fork of the river, including much of its headwaters and tributaries, do not fish the way they did 2 years ago. And they probably won't be fishing like that for a considerable time in the future. The other reason I wanted to show you this image is because this road going across here is elevated probably 40 feet above the river to cut between this ridge and this ridge over here. And the dirt, when they built this huge culvert, this concrete culvert, the dirt that they used to build this almost a dam-looking structure came from this cut right here. And you cannot see it from the road. The only way you can see it is from a low orbit satellite image taken in the winter when the foliage is off the trees. So they got dirt from over here too, brought it through this cut over to the main cut, and then filled in this area here to create the 276 highway and this huge culvert that went through here. So that's just a little insight. When you come down here to fish this area or to hike upstream, you're going to park in this area right here or across the road over here. Really good parking, never had any issues with that. So let's look at this culvert. There it is, looking at it from the upstream, looking downstream. This was taken about mid-morning, one late spring morning when the sun finally broke through the clouds. See the sun coming down. This is a great place to fish in the summer. Chris and I fished downstream a ways and up through here. But it's a great place to fish in the heat of the summer because when it's hot out here, the fish come in here and hang on this side, the south side of this culvert, which is a little bit deeper over here, maybe anywhere from 18 to 24 inches deep, and it gets really shallow on this side over here. But it's just a great place to hang out. It's dark in there, kind of spooky, but the trout like it. Okay, if you turn around and look upstream, this is what it looked like a couple of years ago before Hurricane Fred came in. This was a June flow. This was maybe the first time when Chris and I went there together to fish. This is what it looked like. Great, beautiful, dark colored water. The fish all mostly were hanging over on this side over here. You had this cobbled area with big boulders over here, parking areas up behind our pictures over here, and just a really great place to fish. Moving upstream a little bit on the trail that I told you about, this is what the river looked like before Fred. Beautiful runs, these great runs coming in here, a lot of fish hanging in this area right here. Easy to sneak up on them, lay a big old caddis fly, maybe a hopper dropper combination in here, and was very, very effective. Pretty little brown trout caught in that pool that that we just showed you. Now, someone had commented that Greasy Prong was devoid of life this summer. Here's why. When Tropical Storm Fred came through in the fall of 21, according to the authority, some of the Forest Service people that I've talked with, there was in excess of a 15-foot surge of water that came down through that entire valley. This is an area that we call Skinny Delt Falls, looking downstream from Skinny Delt Falls. And this is what the water level would have looked like. This is the walkway where took a picture from up. Chris and I took a picture from right here that we'll show you in a minute. And that shows you how high the water came up. The bridge was about this level right here. Doesn't exist anymore. So this wall of water went downstream. And, when you get about a mile, a third to a half of a mile up from 276. This is very typical damage that you will see coming down through that gorge. Is that every corner was just routed out by that surge of water and created huge gravel beds, which in the future will be fine, but for right now, it really makes for a tough environment for the fish. You can see down trees, big, huge tree downs. Like for many of you, if you're familiar with the Davidson River, huge tree downs, many of them 20, 30 feet tall, 25, 30 feet wide with hundreds of them, 18, 20 inches in diameter, damming up the creek. And that happened all the way up and down this river. That would back water up another 30 feet, and then the dam would break, and here comes another surge down the creek. So it was just a tough time for the river. That last shot was a satellite image. This is just an image taken of one of the stream banks showing trees and how there's basically nothing but roots they're hanging on to now. All the organic substance, in the soil is gone, and nothing in many cases but just cobble rocks and rock gardens with a stream passing down between it. Chris, this is what it looks like a lot between the two upper falls today.
That's horrible. It's gone.
Yeah, the last time we were there fishing, we had a hard time bringing any fish to hand.
It was horrible. So
as you get upstream about a 1 1/3 miles, the first major tributary comes in, and it's a creek called the Shining Creek, Shining Rock Wilderness, Shining Creek. It comes from some of the highest elevations up, about 4,400 feet up on the side of the mountain. And where it enters, the East Fork is about 3,500 feet. We give it originally in my book, we gave it a 4 thumbs up because it was just really a great brook trout stream with a lot of really nice wild rainbows in there too. It is small at the mouth, a little bit bigger now after Fred, but really only has 3 feeders. It's got the 2 source streams, the North Prong and the South Prong, the North Prong being the highest and best one to fish, and then Daniels Cove, which is questionable as far as how fishable it is or how much effort you want to put into fishing it. It is a steep 9.3% gradient, which basically means if you take a 10-foot 2x4 and you raise it 1 foot, that'd be 10%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but step after step after step going up a stream, it will wear you out over that 1.8 miles. You're gonna gain about 900 feet over that 1.8 miles that this creek flows. Pressure, I've never seen anyone on it. I don't know about you, Chris, but I've seen some hikers up on. I think it's called Rough Butt Trail or something like that. Runs the ridge, and then you got Shining Creek Trail running down by it. But I've never even seen anyone on it. But it's difficult to extreme to fish. Is the way I classify it. Some of you a lot younger than us may classify it less than that, but for me at 69 years old, it's difficult to extreme. Fishing has always been good to excellent, although the one time I fished it last year, about a mile up, it was not fishing that well, and I attribute that to Fred. Rainbows and brook trout, basically what you're going to get there. Access is by trail. I'll show you those trails here. Here's the East Fork of the Pigeon coming up, and here's the way the creek forms up. It comes up with a North Prong and South Prong coming together here at about 3,400 feet, and then it flows down for about another 1.8 miles down into the East Fork of the Pigeon River. This is the part that if you're going to fish this stream that you probably want to concentrate on. These upper areas, if you like extreme fishing, those are great streams to fish. Daniels Cove, I've only been up it a couple of 100 yards. I don't think it's worth the effort. Access, you've got, I think it's Rough Butt Trail. I think it's something Butt Trail, Hard Butt Trail. No, it's Old Butt Trail that takes off from about right here and goes all the way up and all the way up the North Prong into I think Shining Trail or one of the peak trails up here. And then also you can get to it from the trail, the East Fork Trail that follows the East Fork all the way up. This area here, there is no trail. You just have to bushwhack yourself up, and this gets relatively steep right here. But this is a great creek. If you have not fished it, I would fish it sometime this spring. Would probably be the best time, or the late fall.
So Sam, we had a question.
To illustrate.
You got a second? So we had a question from Joshua about campsites along Dark Prong earlier, and any resources on that? I know usually we use Google Maps, and we start looking for indicators along the way. A lot of times the Forest Service will have primitive campsites marked. Any other advice?
Yeah, Joshua, I've never seen a Forest Service campsite on Dark Prong. There are none of them on the maps, but there are fire rings. You will find where people have camped there, and there are beautiful campsites on Dark Prong and Greasy Prong. So you just have to hike up till you find one, and then pitch your tent and have at it. Joshua, as you probably know, they're going, especially on the East Fork, the main flow of the East Fork. I mean, there are places on here that are almost communes. I mean, you'll come up, there'll be 15 or 20 tents of people sitting there. And the next time you come there, 2 months later, they're still there. So there's a lot of camping that goes out in this area right here because it's so remote and so beautiful. Just look for a campsite and pitch your tent. I'm showing this image here because this shows the confluence of Shining Creek and the East Fork after Tropical Storm Fred. This is Shining Creek coming down at a pretty steep elevation. This is East making its way through here. You can see the damage. You used to never see any of this cobbled area over here. This pool here is probably 4 or 5, 6 feet deep now. It only used to be a few feet deep and not near that big. But the amount of water that was coming down through here just gorged this out until it's almost unrecognizable. This is almost slab rock all the way down for a couple of 100 yards down the East Fork from this area here. There was so much water coming down through here. Now, the point here, folks, is this. Trout like to eat bugs, and bugs like to eat organic matter and themselves. And when there's no organic matter or earth in the creek, it's hard for these bugs to live. And so with all the bugs flushed up into the Tennessee River, and the substrate down to basically rock, it's going to take a while for those bugs to get enough organic matter, to create a habitat for these fish to be able to rehabilitate these streams. And I know that's sad. It breaks my heart to say that, but it's the obvious thing, and most of the fish biologists will concur with that central truth. That's the reason you don't see the fish in this stream right now. They're either dead because they drowned and got beat up against the rocks during the flood, or they're flushed all the way up into Tennessee right now, somewhere in the Tennessee River, either dead or downstream in the Gulf of Mexico. But this is a very common sight as you go up the East Fork. This typical little rainbow trout, wild rainbows that you'll catch up there. When you do catch a rainbow trout, you used to catch these hand over hand before the flood. This is a pre-flood shot looking up Shining Creek. This is typically of what it would look like with the moss and the greenery. You would think you're in Ireland fishing with these dark drop pools. There's always a brook trout hanging around somewhere right around in here, and these runs up here, a few rainbows. It was a beautiful, beautiful place to fish. This is up very close to where the north and south prong come together, which is the source of Shining Creek. What it looks like up there. This was pre-flood, but this was from a historic flood, because this is a rock garden that got washed down and piled up there probably 75 years ago, pre-Hurricane Hugo. But even so, these little guys still hang out up there and can still live. This is one that I caught last year on this stream, and I was with the Land to Sky Trout Unlimited group a couple of weeks ago, and I was showing this picture, and someone commented on the size of that caddisfly and how small this fish is. And of course, the point is they're just hungry as hell. They'll anything that looks like a bug, they're going to hit it. And so if they're in there, you'll catch them if you put a bug out there in front of them. As you get up to the peak above Shining Creek, here's the namesakes of the Shining Rock Wilderness, are these quartzite rocks that pop out up there, that the sun catches in the morning and afternoons, and they just light up like diamonds, and they're just beautiful. It's a beautiful place to hang out up there. As you come back down into the East Fork of the Pigeon River and move upstream 3.6 miles, Greasy Cove Prong comes in. Now this is, again, historically has been a prime brook trout hatchery, or not hatchery, but fishery. I always ranked it a 5 thumbs up. Look how high it sources at about a mile above sea level. And it comes into the East Fork at 4,000 feet. I mean, it is high and stays high all the way through its very small flow. There are no tributaries. It's just like a rocket sled coming down off the Balsam Ridge up there. There's nothing coming into it other than just seeps. And look at this, it averages an 11% gradient from all the way down its 1.8 miles. Over a mile and an eight, you're going to drop 1,100 feet, or you're going to climb 1,100 feet if you're fishing it. And I know for Chris and I, that'll tax you pretty darn well right there. So we classify it as difficult to extreme. At least, certainly after you get below the entrance for a few hundred yards, it can get very difficult. You're not going to have any pressure there. There's no one going to get in your way. It's a great stream. Here's what it sources up there at about a mile, and it shoots straight down into the East Fork for about 2 miles. And it's a great stream. There is a trail system up to about this point right here, and it veers away, goes up to the ridge above this falls right here. For about the first mile or so, roughly a mile, you've got a good trail system, good fishing. This area up here is wild. This is where I had my first bear encounter with a bear, was right in here. Very beautiful area, very remote, great place to fish. Here it is coming into the East Fork. This is a low orbit satellite image right here in a winter shot showing the confluence. And again, 2 years ago, you would catch just a glimmer of these slides and falls here. Same thing on the East Fork. You would see a little bit of the foam here, but you would not see any of this rock cover substrate that you're looking at right here. That's all been since Hurricane Fred. And that's the reason, again, that it doesn't fish the way it did. As you head up, this was a shot taken about 3 years ago as you head up Greasy Prong. This is the falls area right here. This area, there's a trail system that peels away about right here, I believe, and heads up to the ridge. And from here up, you're on your own. It's beautiful fishing, but it is very hard. It's hard fishing. It's a great place to fish. This was before the flood, about 3/4 of a mile up. Look at these beautiful drop pools right here. Just one drop pool after the other. I mean, it's just, and every one of them would have a trout in it. Just a great place to fish. Little brook trout there. This is some old growth forest. I believe, I know a forester that knows this area. He knows this tree too. We both think it's a chestnut. It's still about 4 feet in diameter. And you walk across this, and it's just like the day it fell. It's so big they couldn't skid it out of this valley. So it's still across the river there, and probably will be for another couple of 100 years. But this is getting further up in the headwaters here. You can see the stream's getting smaller, but it's still a great place to fish. Still loaded, was loaded before Fred with brook trout, and I suspect the headwaters still have quite a few of them up there. This is me in the headwaters. I was a happy boy because I finally made it for the first time that far up. And this was taken before Hugo. Not Hugo, but Fred. And then Chris, here we are at one of the two East Fork headwaters. This is a rugged stream. Again, it's a rocket sled run. There's no trails for this creek right here. And Chris, I don't know, have you ever fished dark prong?
I hadn't fished dark prong. I have not been on it.
Okay, well we're due to go back up there, next month or the month after, and I'm going to take you to dark prong because if you fish this area, it's just one of those streams that you got to fish. It's an exotic stream to fish. Number one, it's one of the headwaters of the East Fork, and it's just a beautiful stream to fish. I give it a 4 thumbs up. It sources at over a mile. It's the highest sourcing stream of the East Fork at about 5,500 feet. And it comes into the East Fork at about 4,200 feet. I mean, it's a lot. It starts high and it ends high. Very small, no tributaries, has about a 10% gradient, which is a respectable gradient for anybody. And over those 2 miles, you're going to climb, or that creek is going to drop about 1,300 feet. That makes for some pretty difficult to extreme bushwhacking, because you're either going to go up the middle of the stream and up and over all the drop pools and falls, or bushwhack around them to get back in the stream to go the rest of the way. I've never seen anyone else on this stream before. The fishing has always been good to excellent. I think it will recover after Fred probably faster than most of them because it is remote. It's not such a large watershed that it had such a huge amount of water coming down it. The damage was not as extensive as it was with the lower tributaries and the East Fork. And the only thing I've ever caught on it are rainbows and brook trout. The access is from the mouth of where it goes into the East Fork of the Pigeon. And here's what it looks like. Again, very similar to dark prong up here. It's just a straight run for about 1.8 miles coming down, or 2.5 miles as it comes down through here. It's a really great creek. And there are campsites. I know we were talking about Greasy before, but because you do go up in here, and there's no, if you're going to get out, you're going to go out the same way you came in, or bushwhack all the way up to these ridge trails that are over here, or you're going to camp out overnight. And so you will find fire rings and campsites relatively frequently along here. So, just count on that. If you go up in there, number one, don't go by yourself, go with someone. And if you're going to fish any length of this at all, you may want to prepare to stay overnight. Again, satellite imagery of the dark prong coming into the Yellowstone prong. This is the beginning of the East Fork of the Pigeon River right there. That point where dark prong and the Yellowstone prong come together, from that point, it flows 4.1 miles down to Highway 276. That's the formal, what I call the proper East Fork of the Pigeon River. But again, the point I'm making here, look at the Yellowstone prong, the amount of cobbling and scourging that was done up and down that river. And then as it joins the dark prong, look at the scourging of the East Fork as it goes down. 2 years ago, you would not have been able to see any of this. This would just been a forest shot with an occasional rapid foam that you would see from some of the rapids there. Beautiful little rainbows that live up and down there that you'll enjoy catching. This is they call it dark prong. They call it dark prong for a reason. It's steep, heavily forested. The water is kind of a tea tepid color that comes out of there because it's coming off the black balsam ridge. It's coming through numerous feet of balsam loam under those big black balsams, which are beautiful trees in themselves and rare to an extent for this area. This water through that soil and flowing down through here, and it's just got a beautiful color. And I think it makes the bugs a little bit different color and even the fish a little bit different color. Again, typical storm damage. This is looking down from about 120 miles in space. And again, a few years ago, you would not be able to see this, Chris. It's sad. It will recover. A little brook trout caught several years ago on dark prong, which is what it's known for. In fact, this was about a 12-inch brook trout. And you look how fat that fish is. Mm-hmm. That was caught about 200 yards above that pool that I just showed you. This was taken on the same day. I like to fish wet. We're talking about equipment and everything, but in the summer, I never wear waders in these creeks. I fish wet. I don't wear these Sims felt bottoms anymore. I wear corkers with aluminum disc on the bottom, which Chris turned me on to, but I really like those. Further up, in many places, the creek will just disappear, greasy or dark prong will, in these rock gardens as you get closer to the headwater. And then it'll pop out again into a big drop pool. You fish that drop pool, climb through these rocks to the next drop pool. And there's your reward many times. And I like to say, Chris and I are shameless fly fishermen. If it can bite a fly, we will try to catch it. And we return them to the creek after we talk to them and maybe take a picture to them. But again, look at the size of this black ant this guy ate. His mouth was not really big enough to even get it in his mouth. And I'll be darned if he still didn't catch it. But you'll catch those, and you'll catch 8 and 10 inch brook trout up there. Okay, the last headwater of the East Fork is a stream that Chris and I fished in the fall of the last year, called the Yellowstone Prong. And this is a kind of a Jekyll and Hyde stream because the lower part of it is extremely difficult to fish between the waterfalls until you get up into graveyard fields, and it's basically flat, wide, and you'd feel like you're in Arizona or Wyoming someplace fishing a meadow stream out there. It's absolutely beautiful. Give it a 5 thumbs up. It sources about like dark prong at about 5,700 feet, actually higher than dark prong. I thought dark prong was higher. A very high stream, no tributaries coming into it of any significance, about a 10% grade. And over the 3.1 miles, you're going to drop or climb about 1,500 feet. Now, the effort for the upper part, which is in graveyard fields, is easy to moderate because the access from Parkway, you really there's not a lot of effort takes there. The lower is difficult to extreme to a killer. I mean, literally, don't go there, and I'll show you this area, but don't go there unless you've got someone with you, or at least have a transponding GPS that will let people know where your body is when you don't come out, because that's a possibility. The pressure, the upper is very slight. I've only seen a few fishermen in my 30 or 40 years of fishing that area that I've had any conflict. And by conflict, I mean I had to fish around them, or they got jumped in front of me or something. The lower, you're not going to see anyone because most people are not crazy enough to go down there. But if you really want an outback type of fishing experience, an excursion, that's the area, and I'll show it to you. Good to excellent fishing quality. This area, brook brown and rainbow trout, because this area is not as large a watershed like Shining and or like dark and greasy prong, the scourging along here was not as bad. You did not have the damage up here had as you got down further into the gorge area here and started picking up more water. So you won't see that damage there until you get below that Middle Falls area right there. But it starts up here on this balsam ridge where all these black balsams are, and flows for about 3.1 miles all the way down here to dark prong. And that where it joins it and forms the East Fork. Now, there's some landmarks here that I want to make you aware of. There's an upper waterfalls. That's a very popular place for the rock hoppers and all the hikers and people that come here on the weekends. Beautiful falls that you can fish right up to. And then down below that, right below the parking area here on the Blue Ridge Park, on the Blue Ridge Parkway here, there's a paved path down to a bridge going across, and you have the second falls, or some people call it the middle falls. I'm going to show you some images of that. Chris and I fished this whole area last fall, all the way through this falls down below Second Falls. Below there, you've got Yellowstone Falls, which is another bigger falls and more dangerous and less accessible because there's really no trails that go to that of any significance. And then below there, you have what used to be Skinny Dip Falls. I'm going to show you some images of that also. But this stretch of creek is littered with landmarks. You have the Blue Ridge Parkway running parallel to it, literally almost, really it's the entire distance except this one horseshoe that dips away from it right here at Skinny Dip Falls. Great trail system. All of this area out here is honeycombed with trails on all of these ridges, run back and forth over here. So this is if you want to cut your teeth on the East Fork of the Pigeon River, and haven't fished it, this is where Chris and I would recommend that you go fish. This is an area here that used to be called, still is called, Skinny Dip Falls. This is a typical image when you fish through here. This is what you would see most of the times. There would be dozens of people jumping off of rocks into huge pools. Pool up here, pool up here, pool up here, huge pool right here, and a pool below here. Sometimes people would have clothes on. Sometimes people wouldn't have clothes on, but more often than not, when you would come through here, you would fish right through the middle of a dozen or more people, and you would still catch fish. Last couple of years ago, Chris, I fished up through the middle of a crowd of these people, and for the first time, I caught a hellbender. And I'm telling you, when I pulled that critter out of the creek emptied in about 3 seconds. There was not a bather or swimmer or rock hopper within 20 feet of the creek. I mean, guys were reaching for weapons, women were screaming, babies crying, dogs barking, and every camera that could be brought out was taking a picture of this thing hanging from my caddisfly. And so what I did, I got him down, pinned him down, got my caddisfly out of his mouth, which these are slimy little critters that are not pleasant animals to hang on to. But what I did, I threw this thing back in the water. And I never got as many hate looks in my life that day as the people that had been swimming in this creek. When I threw this thing back in the water, I turned around and started fishing. And when I got 100 yards upstream, I turned around and there was still no one, Chris, had gotten in that creek. You would have thought I'd taken a 10-foot alligator out of Skinny Dip Falls. But anyway, this is what the last time Skinny Dip Falls, this is what it looked like. The girls that you saw a minute ago were standing on this rock right here, jumping off into that pool. There's a pool there and about 2 pools above there, and you have this long trench that ran for probably 40 feet out from under that bridge. I caught a nice brook trout, and I think, Chris, you even have that posted on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then you caught a fish, and then I came back and missed a really nice brook trout right there. But in any case, this is what Skinny Dip Falls used to look like. Now, here's where Skinny Dip Falls is located. Look at the 45-degree angle canyon walls coming off the Blue Ridge Parkway up into Graveyard Fields. And the reason I'm showing you this is to show you why this area is scourged so bad today is because the amount of water that was coming down through here. So the rock that the girls were standing on used to be right here. There's nothing left. It ate into the side of the mountain and it's literally gone. That entire area that used to be called Skinny Dip Falls. This picture is taken from where the image was taken of the girls. The bridge went across here. It just does not even exist anymore. This is Skinny Dip Falls in 1919 from 100 miles in space. There's Skinny Dip Falls today. This is an image, a current image that was taken about a month ago. There's nothing left of it. Now, moving up on a more pleasant note, moving upstream from Skinny Dip Falls toward Yellowstone Falls, you have a lot of these rock garden type structures from Fred and from past floods, being Hurricane Hugo and historical floods that washed down through here and deposited these huge rocks in here with pools in between them that you can fish. Nice little rainbow. This was called pre-Fred. This is a rock called Holy Moly Rock. This rock came down from, I write about this rock in my book. This rock came off the Blue Ridge Parkway about 700 vertical feet above this spot on the creek and about a half a mile to the south. And when the engineers torched off the dynamite to clear the roadway to build the Blue Ridge Parkway, this 40 or 50 ton rock started rolling downhill, building up steam as it went down a 45-degree angle. And of course, it was shredding all of the trees in between, and it landed right on the side of the creek here, of Yellowstone Creek, just in a pile of of debris. There used to be the story goes that there was an old squirrel hunter that was hunting down there that day, and it hit right in front of him, near scared him to death. And he walked up and put his finger in this hole. And he tells the story that he could still feel the flash, the ignition flash from the dynamite. And so now the legend has it, if you fish up and down this stretch of the river, Chris, and you fish past here, you've got to stick your finger in this hole. And if you do, it's good luck. So, I do it, and by golly, I think it does bring you good luck. All right, you're going upstream about another quarter mile or so, and there's Yellowstone Falls, just almost a sheer drop. It's a kind of a stepped falls, comes down in a pool, rolls off in another one. This pool and this waterfall and the next waterfall I'm going to show you is the reason I had back and hip surgery last year and the year before, to repair injuries from climbing up these things. You're not supposed to do that, and I'm a good witness for it's not healthy to do it. But this is leading up to this huge rock garden with all of these pools in between it. This is a very beautiful, rugged, but extremely dangerous place to fish. And if you're the mindset that you like expedition style fishing, then I recommend that you get a buddy, somebody you trust, and go in there and fish that sucker. As you move about a quarter to half a mile above it, you start getting into these rock gardens again, and you see this beautiful water as you're approaching Middle Falls. Right here, this is the second waterfall. Chris and I were here in the fall, fished this whole area right here. I didn't catch fish, Chris. Did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't catch a thing.
It was scourged out. The fish are there, but there are not a lot of them right now because of Hurricane Fred. It's going to take several years for the habitat to recover. But it is a beautiful place to go if you haven't been there. As you can see right there, I'm standing on this rock here, dredging it out down here with a woolly booger about 8 feet down.
Yeah, I fished it hard. It was nothing. I like what Darren B said. He said, "Bring a rope." So
bring a rope.
Bring a rope.
For those of you who are watching this, you get to this point. The only way to get around this waterfall is to the extreme right here. There's a wood walkway that's been built by the Forest Service that goes up, circles back around, but it's a heck of a hike to do that. So the obvious thing to do is, since you're wearing either aluminum disc or felt shoes, is to walk up these ledges right here and walk, up there. That sounds like a really good idea, doesn't it? Well, I'm here to tell you it's not a good idea, because I can tell you what it feels like to ricochet off these ledges down into this pool right here, and then dog paddle out, licking your wounds. Take the wood walkway around. Do not try to climb up this waterfall. It looks like you can, and you probably can. I have many times before, but the last time I didn't, and it wasn't worth the surgery. As you get above this waterfall, it turns to almost a slab of solid rock. And as we're looking down over the waterfall, you can see these gouges here from years past where that's full of water. These are also hold fish. You can get up behind this rock here and roll cast down into here, and I've never failed not to catch fish up here. That's right behind that bridge right here. Looking upstream from the bridge, this is what the river starts out, very flat, very open, great big pools. As you can see, it almost looks like you're in Wyoming or Arizona somewhere. It's just a beautiful place. The walkways, many of them are covered. You know, they're wood that to stop the erosion. You can see the drop pools there. Beautiful. I think this is one of the fish you caught several years ago. One of the most beautiful brook trout I've ever seen comes out of Yellowstone Creek in Graveyard Fields. This is what they look like in October. They're just magnificent looking little animals. And that fish was caught somewhere, I think right up there or right over here. But this is how wide Yellowstone Creek is, Yellowstone Prong. It's a beautiful place, cobble bottoms. The fish lay up here under these. All this out here are blueberry bushes. It gets smaller as you go up, get into some bushwhacking up to the falls. And I have not fished past the upper falls, but this is what the upper falls looks like. And it's just a very, very beautiful place. And that's, that takes us to the upper part of as high as you can go on the East Fork of the Pigeon River. And even as you get up there, you got these beautiful little 2 and 3 and 4 inch brook trout that are there. And speaking of bugs, Chris, you want to talk about what we use to fish with when we get there, and then we'll talk about some of the human amenities that they may want to consider.
Yeah, I mean, we'll move through this pretty quick. Darren, you asked if that was a grayling. It was a brook trout. It's just very dark colored, and the colors that year for some reason were just popping on that particular brook trout that you saw. So, but good question. Yeah, so for bugs, and if you'll go to the next slide. Is it advancing? There we go. All right, so obviously, midges, 50% of a trout's diet is midges. Now, on these wild streams, a lot of times I'll actually size up a little bit. So instead of, if I'm on a tailwater, I may be 20, 22. But when I get on the wild streams, I'm gonna increase that size a little bit because you can. This is a size 16. This is a pheasant tail midge. Fishes very well. But obviously have a number of different colors with you: brown, olive, and red. But black's predominant. Sometimes you can get away with purple, but for the most part, you're going to be with black or brown. But midges will get you through a lot of times if you're not getting any takes. And of course, you want to make sure you got a good staple of soft tackles. We fish the stinger quite a bit. That's a custom pattern that I came up with years ago. And then, your typical non-beaded soft tackle, if you want to drop that behind your point fly, a weighted fly, and you're seeing that, action's a little slow, then I would recommend that. Drop that soft tackle back behind, your point fly, which is your heavier bug. And as your dropper, and you'll be amazed at how many takes you can get.
Chris, that fly, which is your invention, by the way, my hat's off. This is a deadly fly for trout.
Catch fish.
I've never seen anything catch, especially wild trout, the way those stingers will.
When you're looking, when you're searching, these are two great patterns. You got a split case on top and you got a BWO on the bottom. Well, Sam, you pretty much, between a split case and a BWO in the Southeast, you've pretty much covered the spectrum, right? Of what you're going to see. My advice is always, if it's a little, cloudy out and you're starting to see those little gray bugs bounce across the water, those are usually going to be BWO flavors. and definitely put one on. Go with a silver bead. If that doesn't go, then try a copper or a gold. And then that split case is again, it's another really deadly fly. I usually size up a little bit. I'll go 18s if I'm on some wild streams. And you can't fish anywhere without having some Frenchies. Now I usually will as my point fly, to get down in some of those deeper, faster runs, especially if we've had some rain. Then I'll put a bigger Frenchie on. Sam and I were fishing Saturday, and I think I had a size 10 Frenchie on, just to get down because there'd been some rain. The water was moving fast. I want to get down quick, and then I'm really focused on that dropper off of that Frenchie. Is really what I'm trying to key in on. But it always happens. The little fish end up taking those big old bugs, as you've seen in some of the other pictures. And then of course, you got to have your staple dry flies. So your elk hair caddis, that parachute hare's ear is a really cool fly. And the fly you see in the middle is a big T fly fishing pattern, Sequoia River Outfitters. That's called the Mac Daddy. And as Sam knows, that is my go-to. If I'm dry fly fishing or dry dropping, that bug catches more fish than any bug I've ever fished. So,
And the thing about it, you cannot sink that bug. You could drop a bowling ball and it'll go through a rapid and will pop right back to the surface.
it is a killer bug. You just got to have loon loxa and a bunch of frogs fanny with you to keep it treated throughout the day. But it'll catch some fish. What you got next, Sam? So definitely, name of that fly was a Mac Daddy. You go to YouTube, if you go to Big T Fly Fishing on YouTube, and I'm talking slow so you guys can write it down, but if you go to Big T Fly Fishing on YouTube and just put in Mac Daddy or look through his videos, that he did a video on it years ago, probably 5-6 years ago. And you can learn how to tie it. I used to tie them and sell them, and I don't because they just take too long. So, but I would tell you on Yellowstone, one of the best flies is the polywing midge here. That bug has caught more brook trout on Yellowstone than any dry fly that I've ever fished. So usually I'll have a Mac Daddy, and then I'll have a polywing midge off the back of it, and it'll catch fish. Usually size 16 is a pretty good size. And of course, the comparidons, if you're not fishing comparidons, then you're missing out. And then, the old standby. So, on the left there, you have a non-beaded hare's ear, a little bit bigger fly. You got a beaded hare's ear and a stone fly. One of my new favorite patterns is this case caddis. If you go to our website, you can see it there. It has been a really good fly. Gets down fast. They're bigger, 10s, 12s. Man, they catch a lot of fish. Tippet size, guys, I usually 6X. Sometimes I'll go 6.5. On a wild stream like that, it really doesn't matter as much like it would on a tailwater, where you got to sometimes go to a 7. But you can fish 6X and you're going to do pretty well. And then, of course, if you hit the website right now, East Fork 20, you got a 20% off on a lot of these flies that you just saw, except for the Mac Daddy. You got to learn how to tie that one on your own.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks for the insight on the bugs. A lot of people want to know, well, when you go to these places, where are the local outfitters? In Brevard, North Carolina, is Davidson River Outfitters. That's actually Brevard, and Pisgah Forest is actually that area right there. But Kevin Howell and his team, no one knows this area we're fishing right now any better than he and his team. Kevin himself has fished it his entire life, but if you're fishing the Davidson or anywhere in Shining Rock, those people know how to help you. If you're in the Waynesville, Silva area, Dale and his team at Tuskegee Fly Shop, same thing. They dip down into this area pretty heavy too, and can really help you out. And then of course, if you're up in the Asheville area in the big city, Frank Smith and his team at Hunter Banks Fly Fishing, they're really great people. And one of the older outfitters, in the Southeast, is my understanding. All of those people are great people, and I'm sure it can help you any way you'd like. Things can happen when you get from the standpoint of weather. And if you find the water in the East Fork of the Pigeon River is too high, if you don't like fishing high water like me, I can't find the fish when the water gets high. And so I typically look for some other place. Well, there's some Plan B watersheds around there. Certainly the Davidson River is one. It's just on the south side of the slope of where the East Fork is. Along with the Looking Glass Creek, which is its largest tributary, between the Davidson River and Looking Glass and Avery Creek. Those are great creeks to jump on if you need different water. Also, the North and East Fork of the French Broad River, with the East Fork being a delayed harvest stretch, but the North Fork runs up Highway 215, which is on the south side of Shining Rock Wilderness. Those are two great watersheds. Or the North and South Fork of the Mills River. The North Mills also has a delayed harvest sitting right there in Mills River, right under Asheville. The South Fork is running up really parallel to 276. And then the West Fork of the Pigeon River is over in the West Fork Wilderness area, on the other side of the ridge, just northeast of where you would be. So those are Plan B waters. If you need more water to fish, we fish these waters very heavy. And really like them a lot. So whether you're fishing the East Fork or you're fishing any of these, you might just run into us. A lot of people want to know where to stay, chow, drink, and smoke, which is how we gauge a good watershed, because you got to have a good place to stay, you got good stuff to eat, you got to have something to drink, and you need something to smoke. Well, for lodging in Brevard or Pisgah Forest, for people like Chris who want only the best, there's a Holiday Inn Express there. There's also a Sunset Motel, which is several layers below that, a lot less expensive, easy to get in and out of, that kind of thing. In Waynesville, the Oak Park Inn is very much like the Sunset Motel, but for if you want a roof over your head, there's a roof over your head, and at good striking distance to the water, and all of those that I just told you about. If you're a camper, like me, in the Brevard Pisgah Forest area, the famous Davidson River Campground is right there in Pisgah Forest, just right over the ridge from the East Fork. And then you have the Pisgah Campground on the Blue Ridge Parkway, about 4 or 5 miles north on the Parkway from the East Fork of the Pigeon River. So it's very close, and it's a great campground. I don't care, in the middle of summer, in July, you can be up there camping at that ridge at about 4,500 feet, and you'll have to have a sweater on. If you're in Rossman, North Carolina, there's a Lazy J campground that you can camp on the North Fork of the French Broad. There's food everywhere, folks. Gas stations have food, but Brevard Pisgah Forest is kind of the base camp we consider. Well, my favorite, and Chris is going to laugh at me here, is the Twin Dragons, because they've got every kind of food in there. It's an Asian place, but they've got every kind of food from Mexican to Chinese. And the reason I like it is because they have the best frog legs I've found anywhere, and it's all buffet style. So it's a great. Yeah, I know you need to step out on the edge a little bit, Chris.
They actually have great sushi there. By the way, Darren, I got you now. Darren, the grayling comment was a joke because of that dorsal fin on that brook trout. That was pretty funny. Thank you. But Sam loves twin drag. I call it the red dragon because after you eat there, it's the red dragon. It'll bite you.
Well,
I can tell you that.
well, if you prefer more kind of pub food, restaurant kind of food, Duggan's Pub downtown Brevard is a good pub to hang out. They have really good food there. If you're a craft brew person like I am, and some places got food too and got craft. In Brevard, Pisgah Forest, you got Oscar Blues, which is a Colorado very large brewery. This is their second location. And then you have Brevard Brewing, downtown Brevard. So you got two breweries right there, but up the river a little bit, a place called Mills River. There's a brewery called Sierra Nevada, which is also the second branch brewery out of a California brewery that is, in my opinion, it is the shining beacon of breweries in America. It is, if you've never been to Sierra Nevada in Mills River, North Carolina, it is a destination. If you're in Waynesville, Frog Level Brewing is another one that's right downtown Waynesville. That's a good place to hang out. If you're a cigar smoker like Chris, Waynesville, you got Smoky Mountain Cigars, and in Brevard, you got Octopus Garden Smoke Shop. So there's plenty of things around, to keep you busy when you go to these places. Before we get into questions and answers, just want to thank our main sponsor tonight, being Mojo Sportswear Company. Thanks for everybody joining tonight. If you're interested in our next webcast, go to our website and click the other tab, and you can see the lineup for the next 6 months or so.